Welcome to another edition of Currently in Quincy. I'm Joe Catalano, and on today's program, we'll sit down with Quincy's new Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Liaison, Damian Utar. First, though, we take a look at the weather and the news for you. Currently in Quincy, it's wet and it's windy. 68 degrees right now with some wind-swept showers blowing through. We'll have more of that off and on throughout the day today. Maybe a break around midday. It'll never be completely dry, but the rain may let up for a little bit. And then more rain moves in later this afternoon, maybe even some storms around this evening, with lows dropping off into the upper 60s. A little better tomorrow for this last weekend of August, but we still could see some afternoon thunderstorms tomorrow. It'll be humid too, with a high around 80 degrees. Better on Sunday for sure. Mix of sun and clouds, a very slight risk for a shower on Sunday, highs in the lower 70s. And of course, it'll be beautiful on Monday with sun and clouds. More comfortable with highs Monday into the low 70s. Again, a windy and rainy 68 degrees in Quincy right now. Checking news for you today, Quincy Mayor Thomas Koch says that a community meeting regarding the state's new Welcome Center for Migrants and the Homeless at Eastern Nazarene College will likely be held sometime next month. The mayor says he attended a recent meeting organized by residents who are concerned about that new center.
Talking about holding some kind of a rally around ENC in opposition to it, and I didn't think that would be helpful at all in the dialogue here. So yes, we did have a meeting at Beechwood. The word got out; it got on social media. So we had several hundred people there at that meeting. We shared the information that we have, again reiterating that the Eastern Nazarene College had responded to an RFP, request for proposal, issued by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for Welcome Center / interim housing for some folks. So unbeknownst to us, CNC did respond to it. They did not inform us of that. I did hear from the Lieutenant Governor very shortly before they opened the center. I had a million questions that they really couldn't answer. So I asked the Lieutenant Governor for the state and ENC combined to hold a meeting for the committee so they could answer questions and concerns or address concerns the committee may have. So that has not happened to date. I talked to Governor Healy last Friday, again reiterating that there should be a meeting. She agreed. So I know they're working on getting one in the books, I think in the first week of September.
That new center provides housing for up to 58 families, mostly from Haiti. Bay State Community Services of Quincy and a shelter management firm hired by the state are operating the Welcome Center and the housing on the ENC campus. City of Boston continues to move forward on plans to build a new Long Island bridge and then open a substance use recovery center on Long Island. After touring Long Island earlier this week, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu outlined plans to create a full-service recovery center that would open in 4 years.
When there were different programs, each program kind of did their own thing and had their own base of individuals and patients that they were working with, and sometimes people would go through multiple programs, but it was really kind of, you come on the mainland, and then if you had a spot in a program, you'd go to that program. We envision this as a comprehensive, coordinated, and very cohesive seamless flow of many providers and many helping hands, envisioning what that whole spectrum of services looks like that will be perceived to the patients and individuals as just one and the same, rather than this door and that door and that door, as someone had described in a previous meeting, of the largest front door that we could possibly build. And that really requires us to start now in building the relationships, the partnerships, the back-end systems, and ways to manage the data and intake and all of that, so that we will be ready in 4 years as soon as the bridge is done, that the buildings are in phase 1 are done, and that programs and services are already working well together.
Today, Wu is outlining her more immediate plans to deal with the situation at Mass and Cass using the current Shattuck shelter operation. She made no mention of the City of Quincy's latest appeal of a state permit that was approved for the bridge, even as Quincy Mayor Thomas Koch pledges to continue the legal fight against a new bridge, citing concerns about traffic and environmental impacts. The same day that Wu was detailing her plans for Long Island, Quincy officials met on Wednesday with Congressman Stephen Lynch and the U.S. Coast Guard to explain the city's opposition to the bridge project. Proposal to replace an existing two-story professional building on Totman Street in South Quincy with a new four-story 32-unit condo building has been approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals. At a meeting this week, the board unanimously okayed the plans by developer Sean Galvin to tear down his existing building there, rezone the area to residential from industrial use, and then build those new residences. Ward 4 City Councilor James Devine acknowledged that some neighbors are concerned about traffic and parking in that area, but conceded he had no solutions.
I don't want it to look like North Quincy, so I think that by controlling how we build certain buildings, we already have 304 that went in pretty easy right down the street, so I really feel for my neighbors because they really they have their valid thoughts, but I'm more concerned what's going to happen with the future. I'd hate to see 300 units go in there again, but at the same time, this is a tough one.
Yeah.
You know, because what the state's doing to us, I don't think's right. You know, the red line's broken, but with that being said, we have a tough road ahead of us, and so yeah, it's very tough. So I don't have a lot to add. Sorry.
Developer said that a traffic study indicated that the new project would actually result in fewer motor vehicle trips than the current building, and that the plans for a 27-space parking garage under the new building exceed the parking requirements for that development. Also this week, the Zoning Board approved plans for a 6-story, 53-unit building on Hancock Street, plus a 4-story, 27-unit building around the corner on Wentworth Road in Wollaston. And plans for a recreational marijuana dispensary on Liberty Street were continued pending the results of a traffic study. Now, Quincy City Clerk Nicole Crispo says almost 27,000 registered voters in Quincy have been placed on the inactive voter list because they haven't returned their city census forms yet. Crispo says they're being given one last chance to return those census forms.
The ones that didn't return their city census, they're getting a card in the mail in the next week or so. We're still waiting for the vendor to send out the card, but this card says you are now on the inactive list. So to correct that before we run our voter list, you can certainly call our office, update your census, or send back the card. And that's the most important thing, to please send back the card to say, oh, please take me off. I'm still here, you know. But we wanted to give everybody one more third time's the charm, we're hoping. And it comes so quick to November, but quicker than that, it comes to the March presidential primary. And for that, you definitely need to update your census in order to be, you know, on the current voter list. Not that you're not going to be able to vote, but you're going to have to show your ID at the polls, and that just slows people down.
Crispo says a voter on the inactive list will still be able to vote during the November 7th city election, but as she said, must first show ID at the polls. There are about 65,000 registered voters in Quincy. Faxon Park in Quincy will be getting some improvements in the near future. About 50 residents attended a recent meeting with the Department of Natural Resources and Ward 2 Councilor Anthony Andronico recently, where they heard plans for pickleball courts, a new picnic pavilion, and a frog pond that would function as a splash pad in the summer and skating rink in the winter. Officials also said a new access road to Faxon Park could be added from the Falls Boulevard side of the park. However, The city stressed that it would not be a through road to prevent it from being used as a cut-through. The improvements are expected to take place next year. It's our check of news for you today. Coming up, Damien Utar, the city's first diversity, equity, and inclusion liaison, will be joining us next. Back, the City of Quincy's first ever Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Liaison started his job a few months ago, and he's stopping by here to tell us a little bit more about himself and about what he plans for the future. Damien Utar. Good to see you again, Damien.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome now in your new role, right?
Indeed.
When did you start, actually, the job?
June 5th.
Okay, all right, so you've been a little while now.
Yes, a little under 3 months.
Yeah, but
It's
no
getting
stranger to the City of Quincy, right?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Been a resident for about 22 years. I have 2 boys that are part of the Quincy Public Schools. My wife works here, and I work here. And it's a wonderful city. And so when I saw the opportunity to serve, it was a no-brainer for me.
Worked out, yeah, just everything kind of fell into place, because it was about a year-long search for this position, as you're well aware.
Yes, indeed. So, you know, I was paying attention to the conversations that were being had in terms of how the position evolved, or at least how the conversation in the creation of the position evolved. And, you know, I have an extensive background in mental health and social services. And the way the position was described, I saw that it was a perfect fit, both in terms of my professional experience, but also in terms of just who I am as a person. I really see myself as a servant of the community, and so it was a perfect fit. It couldn't have been more perfect.
You are a native of Jamaica, is that right?
I am.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, so I'm the last of 6 children. I'm the proud son of 2 parents who are, they were civil servants. My dad worked at a hospital. My mom was a school principal, owned her own school, and it was really a community school. It was more of a calling for her. It was really not a business, because quite a number of the kids that showed up to that school really didn't pay. So it was just her just doing it as something that the school was actually on the property where we lived.
I see.
So I grew up as a child just seeing service, not talked about, but demonstrated. And so as a child, I was very much intimately familiar with what service was all about, especially serving the community and the local community where you lived. So I really credit my parents a lot for the person that I am today in a number of ways, but in particular as it relates to being a servant of the community.
When did you first come to the United States?
In 1997
Okay.
or 96,
And
thereabouts.
What brought you here?
So I was actually recruited by an organization, and I worked on the Cape. So that was my first landing point, if you will.
Okay.
Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And then from there, started my career in health and human services, and never stopped.
And worked your way north to Quincy.
Indeed, indeed. In 2000, November of 2000 was when I officially started, and just sort of worked my way through and started out as an outreach worker, which, funny enough, a lot of what I do now resembles that, because a lot of what I do now is reaching out to folks in the community and working from sort of formal and informal, using formal and informal strategies to connect with folks within the community. And in outreach work, that's what you do a lot. So in many ways, a lot of what I did in the past really prepared me for this role.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think it would be a combination of things, right? It's actually physically getting out in the city and going to different community organizations and events, but also in this day and age of electronics, using social media and other forms of outreach, right?
Not my strongest point, but I'm getting support around that. Let's put it that way.
All right.
But no, if there's a need, I'm highly motivated to do what is necessary to get the word out and to be responsive to folks.
So what is your kind of job description, Damien? You know, what you're actually tasked with doing?
Sure. So it's really around access to services, ensuring that folks from all communities, from all cultural backgrounds, really have not just access to services that the city offers, but quality access. A lot of times people talk about having access, and it's easy to check a box to say someone has access to something, but do they really have quality access to it? So just giving somebody the name of a department and a telephone number and saying that's access, it's actually not.
Well, right. You need to know what questions to ask, right?
Right.
So you need to know what specific services you might be entitled to from that department, and how to execute that, right?
Yes, and it's also entails, especially in today's day and age, where 40, 50 years ago, there was sort of a monolith in terms of what the people living in a specific area, who they were and what they looked like. Now that's not the reality anymore, no matter where you go. And so you have a whole group of people with different cultural backgrounds. And so you have to develop that cultural competence as well to understand what does quality of life or quality service, what does that look like for that person or for that group? And so unless you are really doing what we call in-reach, because the difference between outreach and in-reach, into a certain space, you really won't understand that.
So, not to put you on the spot, but it's been less than 3 months. What have you done so far?
Well, if I do say so myself,
Yes.
as a sort of a one-man show, I would like to say that I'm proud of a lot of what we've accomplished.
Okay.
So there's been a bit of a strategy in terms of the last time you and I spoke about this, in terms of getting out there and not just meeting people as individuals who live in the community, but also connecting with the respective departments and programs throughout the city. Because in order to be effective at in-reaching and outreaching to people who live within the city, you really need to understand, A, what are the services that are in place, and have some intimate understanding of how those programs and departments operate. So I've been aggressively reaching out to the department heads throughout the city, and just getting in there and talking with them and spending some time even in those spaces. So that way I have an intimate understanding of what the product is, if you will.
Yes.
So when I'm speaking to somebody about the service, I have some knowledge as to what I'm talking
Sure.
about.
Well, I mean, you've lived in the city now for almost 25 years.
Yes.
Have you learned things about Quincy that you did not know previously?
Oh, Lord.
Really?
Every week, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Even in terms of some of the buildings.
Sure, yeah.
I've been sharing this recently. I've been going to the Fours for close to 20 years. And I didn't know that there was actually 2 or 3 floors above the Fours, and that Mass Hire was there.
Yes.
So when I went there for a meeting with the leadership there, I was standing outside the Fours saying, but this is the address they gave me, but this is the Fours. And someone saw me kind of bumbling around,
Yeah.
and I mentioned to them, and he mentioned, oh, there's an elevator, you could go upstairs.
Oh.
And so that's actually how I started the meeting. Like for 20 years, I
Yeah.
kept coming in here.
Well,
and
you
didn't
wouldn't
know
have
it was
used it
there.
otherwise, right? Yeah.
So for me personally, I am discovering all kinds of different things. But in terms of even services, though, and programs, I'm learning a lot too. And I'm getting a lot of that information through the website,
Okay.
the Quincy website. And that has been a launching point. Also, in terms of just talking with people, every person I talk with has been a conduit of information for other things that I could look into. So that's why I call it the Listen and Learn Tour. The last time I was here, I mentioned
That's
that.
right, yes.
And I have been doing that every day. And I will continue to do that pretty much for the duration of my time in this role.
Okay.
Because things are constantly changing. People are constantly changing. People are coming in, people are coming out, people's circumstances are going to change. And if you stop listening and learning and going in and really talking to people, things may change. You may not be aware of that change, and you may end up right back on square one. So that really forms the nucleus of how I am going to be conducting this role. Constantly being in these various spaces, constantly listening and learning.
As you know, the creation of this role came about after discussions regarding race relations within the city. And it was, I guess at the time, maybe not now, but at the time it was seen as maybe a position that could help work as a liaison, right, between the different ethnicities. Do you see that as a possibility also, or a need in the city?
I'm still in the process of trying to process that in terms of, because one of the things I don't think is effective or helpful is, there are times when you need to take a surgical approach to an issue, and sometimes you need to take a more sort of a macroscopic approach. So I'm still working my way through and understanding what is the extent of that issue. I definitely know that, compared to other communities, it's not a prominent issue, but it's a city of 100,000 people.
And changing and growing, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I would not be surprised if there were pockets of issues where individuals could benefit from some education and some cultural sensitivities, and having things in place to assist in having various groups coexist in a manner that is respectful and tolerant. So I'm definitely looking at all the various issues that are happening, but at this point in time, my primary focus is really on what are the services that are here, what people's imminent needs are. Okay, because one of the things that we don't want to do is to create responses to things that do not exist. So it's first of all understanding what are the issues that really exist, and we'll follow that to its logical conclusion.
Sure.
So as I am learning, and but one of the things around these types of social issues, and that's why I talk a lot about in-reaching, is that people are sometimes reticent in speaking about these things. So you have to build a relationship first, and then the hope is that they will become more comfortable in coming forward and saying, I'm really having these issues, and this is what I think is why I'm having these issues. And so we can sort of, as a community, move toward a solution of some kind.
Yeah. So do you have kind of a timeline in mind, Damien, for when you'll kind of finish this process and then move on to the next step? Community gathering or some kind of public event?
So, as you know, we have 6 wards, and it's about really getting into the various spaces and understanding. The other thing I don't want to do is to recreate the wheel or reinvent the wheel. And so wherever there are ongoing community events, I will be going to those events.
Okay.
And
August Moon just happened.
I was there.
Okay.
And just to create a space whereby, that's one of my goals actually, to really make myself and this role become increasingly visible.
Yes.
And that's going to take a little time.
Well, you're only one person.
Exactly. Yeah, only one person. And even if there was a department of several, people are busy, and not everyone. Some people are more social media. Some people read the papers. Some people watch QATV.
It's very diverse now.
I'm a very devout watcher of your program.
Thank you.
And so there are different platforms.
Yep.
And so it's going to take a little time before everybody sort of knows about the role. But that's one of my goals.
Okay. For folks watching now or listening in the future that have questions, concerns, issues that they want to talk with you about, how do they do that?
Certainly. I am very much open. In fact, that's part of the Listen and Learn tour that I'm doing. I want to hear from people. I want input. That's number one.
Okay.
Can't do this by myself. I want input from everyone. So my telephone number is 617-376-1050. Email is doutar@quincyma.gov. It's better to send me an email.
Okay.
I kind of organize myself a lot more efficiently around the email.
Okay.
But if you want to call and leave me a message, and again, it could be for any reason, input, suggestions, feedback of any kind, feel free to reach out.
Okay. Will we be seeing you at any upcoming events in the near future?
I can't give you a specific one right now, but what I'm actively doing is I am looking throughout the calendar to see what community events are happening throughout the city,
Yes,
and
okay.
I'm showing up for that,
Okay.
for those. What I'm looking, and I'm glad you asked that question, is as these events are being organized, reaching out to the organizer and asking that they sort of advertise that I will be present so people can come with a mindset to engage me.
Okay. All right. Well, please consider us here at QATV part of that mission. We'd love to
Most
help you reach
definitely.
out to the community.
Most definitely. Thank you, Joe.
And please come over on a regular basis. We'd love to get updates, Damien.
Yes, that's actually one of the goals.
Okay.
To have routine communication with the city, and also not just the residents, but also the respective departments.
Yes.
Gonna be
Of which there are 27, by the way.
There are
which
27.
I didn't even know that.
Yep,
so,
there
yeah.
are 27 departments, and 17 of which are more sort of directly connected to the community.
Yeah.
So my focus is on those 17, and really reporting out to the city in terms of sort of a health check, if you will,
All
of
right.
how we're doing as a city. So you will definitely be one of those platforms.
Good. Good to talk to you. Thank you.
Same here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just enough time to check the forecast for you for the rest of the day today. Kind of what you see is what you get. If you were wondering if that's a live shot outside our studios, wonder no more. The window is soaked with a rain and wind this afternoon in the low 70s. A little better tomorrow, still a chance of a shower. Much better on Sunday, and of course, it'll be nice on Monday. Thanks again to Damien Utar for joining us today. Thank you to our crew. Thank you for watching. Speaking of Monday here in the program, it's all about back to school. The superintendent and the assistant will be joining us. Hope you can join us as well. Meantime, check our website, qatv.org. Our latest programs are there. There's news and information, video on demand, live streaming, and more. For all of us here at QATV, I'm Joe Catalano. Have a great weekend.